thank you for tuning into Storytime with the Clinton United Methodist Nursery School. I'm Mr. Klausner, or if you prefer, you can call me Mr. Matt, and I'm going to tell you a story today. It's not from a book, but it's something I heard a couple years ago, and I keep thinking about it, which must mean it's a great story. Have you ever heard of a country called Iceland? Iceland, maybe you can tell by the name, has lots of ice. They have hundreds of glaciers. And glaciers are giant pieces of ice, sometimes much bigger than mountains, that when they move, and they move very slowly because they're heavy, they cut out mountains and holes that fill with water to become lakes. And millions of years ago, we used to have those here too, but they've all melted. And if you wanted to see one today, one of the places you could go is Iceland. Check out the globe. Let's see here. This little light yellow country is Iceland, and this is the North Pole, so you could tell Iceland is quite close to the North Pole, which explains all the ice. And well, we live over in here, so you could see that to get there you would need either a plane or a ship. The people in Iceland speak a language called Icelandic. And they have a name there called Huldufolk, and in their language that means hidden people. The hidden people, or Huldufolk, are tiny little magical people. They're about this big. They remind me of leprechauns or elves, but what the Huldufolk like to do is live on the insides of rocks. Iceland also has tons of rocks. Many of their most interesting rocks were from lava from volcanoes millions of years ago that have cooled down and created fantastic shapes. And they happen to be great places for little elf-like people like the Huldufolk to live. And the Huldufolk have some pretty magical powers, and they do not like their rocks disturbed. So let me tell you a little bit about something that happened not too long ago. But first, let's check out some rocks here. This looks like a wall, but it's actually just the top of a giant boulder that's mostly underground. This might be just the type of place that a Huldufolk community would like to live. If you come a little further down, you can see a great little place. But this wasn't made by magical elves called Huldufolk. This was made by little boys. I bet this would be a great place to live. This could be just the kind of crack that they like. But I don't see any little people in there, just some dried up leaves and twigs. Not so long ago, just before most of you were born, they tried to build a road in Iceland that was supposed to go through a very rocky area. And to build it, they were going to have to smash the biggest rocks with bulldozers and dynamite. So they brought in the best construction crews with the biggest bulldozer and the most powerful dynamite in the whole country. And they asked them, "Can you build a road through all these rocks?" And they said, "Of course we can, no problem. We smash bigger rocks than this every day. This won't take us long at all." When the people who lived around the rocks found out about the bulldozers and the dynamite, they became very upset. They believed that the Huldufolk lived inside those rocks. Though nobody had ever seen the Huldufolk, they had heard the stories for their whole lives, and they didn't want to take any chances. They went to the city and said, "You have to stop construction. You can't build that road. If you smash the rocks, the Huldufolks will have nowhere to live." But the people in the city just laughed and said, "We don't believe in elves." And construction continued. On the first day, they brought in the biggest bulldozer in the whole country. It could move any rock. They'd never found a rock that it could move, and it had never broken down. But that day, it wouldn't even start. The crew had to wait for a bulldozer mechanic to arrive and get it running again. It took all day, and they got nothing done. The people in the city were not very happy, and the road was not being built. The people who lived around the rocks said that it was the Huldufolk trying to keep the workers from building the road. The workers and the people in the city just said, "We don't believe in elves." The next day, the bulldozer started up without any problems, but as soon as they tried to push the first rock, the blade snapped right off of the front. The workers were confused. The bulldozer had moved much bigger rocks, and it had never broken before. There was nothing that they could do. They had to get another blade. It took days to arrive, and another whole day to put on the bulldozer. Nothing got done for a whole week. The people in the city were getting madder every day. The people who lived around the rocks just reminded them that if the Huldufolk didn't want a road to be there, there would never be a road there. The workers and the people in the city just said, "We don't believe in elves." Since the bulldozer hadn't been much help, they decided to use some dynamite to explode the rocks instead. But when they pushed the big red button to set off the explosion, it didn't explode at all. It just made a fizzling sound and a little bit of smoke. The workers were furious. The people in the city were even madder. The people who lived near the rocks reminded them one more time that the Huldufolk were the reason that the bulldozer kept breaking, and the Huldufolk were the reason that the dynamite didn't work. The workers and the people in the city said, "We don't believe in elves, but this is getting very expensive, and we still haven't gotten anything done." So they took out a map, and they figured out a way around the giant rocks. The road would have to be much longer than they thought, but it seemed like the only way that they'd ever finish the project. So they picked up their dynamite and they drove away in their bulldozer. As soon as they left, everything went back to normal. The bulldozer worked every day and never again found a rock that it couldn't move. The workers quickly finished the long road and went all the way around the big rocks. When they were done, the workers and the people in the city were very happy. The people who lived near the rocks were also very happy because the Huldufolk were safe. And the Huldufolk, if they were really in there, or if they're real at all, were very happy too. Now we're going to do a craft. We're going to make little houses for the Huldufolk. And of course, you remember, they like to live on the insides of rocks. So we're going to have to start with a rock. And if you remember, the Huldufolk are about this big. So you'll need something bigger than that so that they can at least get through the door. And you'll probably want some windows. So you'll need some paint to make the doors and windows, and some paint brushes. Maybe a cup of water. And you can choose what kind of paint you use. If you use washable kids paint, it will wash off in the rain if you keep your rocks outside. So you might want to have your mom and dad help you spray them afterwards with something clear like an acrylic spray. Or you could keep them indoors. It's up to you. We have our paint, and we've chosen rocks that seem to be just about the right size, and a glass of water for rinsing our brushes. And Willie and Amos are going to help me by painting some additional homes for the Huldufolk. We're going to add doors, windows, maybe a chimney or a roof, and a few decorations. I chose to give them a yellow and purple door, and 2 windows, a roof, and some flowers. Willie, can you tell me about yours?
So this is like the roof, maybe some solar panel. And they have those are solar panels, but that's the door. As you can see, made that kind of like 3-dimensional sort of. And that's a big magical flower. That's a big window. That's about all I have for now.
That looks great. Amos, can you tell me what you made?
This egg. There's a little magic. But you could go inside the egg for the home, and then there's like Mario and stuff. And you could play with Mario whenever you want. Bye, guys. Okay, ready.
Now all that we've got to do is find a good place to put them so that the Huldufolk can find them. Well, there we go. We'll have to keep an eye on these and see if anything happens.
Bye, guys. Bye.
Bye.